And when I talk about education like I did just a moment ago, I think it's important to note that the most important issue facing South Carolina is actually our economy. What are we going to do to lower the unemployment rate? What are we going to do to increase the average income in South Carolina? What are we going to do to help the private sector to accomplish those things? Frequently when I tell folks I think that's most important rather than education being most important, I get a little pushback from folks. But I got to tell you, I think education is actually a subset of the economy. Our goal is to have people making more money and have a better quality of life and make them live. Our goal isn't for our kids to do really good on standardized tests so we can get a magnet, put it on the refrigerator and brag about it. I mean, the goal is to help children prepare so that they have a better life. So the economy is the most important thing. Congress needs to realize that government, especially more government, isn't the solution to all of our problems. We've seen a good deal of federal expansion, particularly overreaching in the last 4 years. But the federal government's takeover of our national health care system with ObamaCare by far takes the cake as one of the worst. While the recent Supreme Court ruling on ObamaCare didn't strike down the law entirely, it did provide states with a few options. First of all, the court did correctly define ObamaCare as what I believe it really is. That is a forced tax increase on people in this country. Something that every Democrat in Congress tried to claim it wasn't, but the court said it was. Still, something that still neither Congress nor the President has said, to this day, still, neither the Congress nor the President has said how we're going to pay for this incredible expansion. On the state level, the court did address ObamaCare's massive new Medicaid expansion. Instead of being forced into a mandate, fortunately, each state must now opt in to various provisions of the bill. So instead of it coming from the top down and us being told we have to take it, now we're in a position where we're able to not include it simply by not opting in to a number of the provisions. And I expect you'll hear a lot from Republicans about not opting in because of the incredible cost that's involved. Well, at least in South Carolina, the solution to this unfunded government health expansion is pretty clear. Don't opt in. Defeat any opt-in amendments that we have put on the floor as we're debating the budget or debating bills that relate directly to Obamacare. Yes, ma'am.
You had mentioned Obamacare and the option to not opt in. Mm-hmm. There's also a bill that Representative Chumley has introduced that would allow us to nullify Obamacare. What is your stance on that? And
I haven't read the bill. I can tell you that I expect the Republican caucus to strongly oppose the opting in, which is what you do. I mean, if you don't opt in, you don't become a part of. You don't include those provisions. And I expect the Republicans to very much oppose the Obamacare and all of those provisions. And that's my position also. Yes, sir.
Mr. Speaker, as far as your personal beliefs on the 10th Amendment and where we stand with the federal intrusion, federal government coming in, we know about Obamacare, but right behind that this week there's going to be 5 or 6 bills in the House registering and confiscating semi-automatic rifles. For a lot of us, that's the line in the sand. What is your personal belief on the 10th Amendment and actually the state saying no to the federal government? And just want to get your comments on that.
Well, the 10th Amendment, obviously I support the 10th Amendment. Your question was a little more about the Second Amendment and guns particularly and semi-automatic weapons particularly. South Carolina has always been an incredibly strong Second Amendment state. We've always been a strong 10th Amendment state. I don't see that changing anytime in the foreseeable future. I mean, I think that we will continue to be pro-Second Amendment and particular Republicans in the House now and in the Senate. I do expect you'll see bills introduced that are different from that. Not by Republicans, I don't think, but I think you'll see bills introduced. I think you have to bear in mind that there are probably, in a given session, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 bills introduced. I mean, a lot of things get introduced in the General Assembly, and only a small fraction of those actually make it through the process. A slightly bigger fraction starts going through the committee process, but only a fraction of that actually makes it all the way through the process to pass the House or the Senate, and then even a smaller number, as you heard me talking about in my remarks a minute ago, pass both bodies. So the fact that a bill is being introduced that is an anti-Second Amendment bill doesn't concern me. The Republicans won't oppose that. I'm sure the Republicans will oppose that, and I don't think any kind of legislation like that would actually move in the House. And I don't think it'd move in the Senate. Senator Fair, quarterback Fair, is shaking his head no, also said, I think they would move in the Senate. Yes?
Thank you, Mr. Harrell. Mr. Speaker, we are having a rally tomorrow. You probably are aware of it. And a press conference supporting Representative Chumley's bill, nullification bill. I've talked to Representative Phyllis Henderson and Dan Hamilton and others about this bill and hoping for co-sponsorship. I guess my question to you is this. Since you haven't read the bill, I actually have the bill here for you if you want to read it afterwards. But more importantly, how do you feel about South Carolina being able to nullify this juggernaut of ObamaCare coming in? I stood at yours and Mike Fair's USC Law School a few weeks ago when Professor Greenwald, Harvard professor, come here pushing it on us, him and others. And how do you feel about us being able to nullify through our state House and our state Senate this oppressive ObamaCare coming in? Can you help us?
Yeah, I mean, I thought I'd answered that a moment ago in my remarks, and again with the question that was asked just a moment ago.
So
I don't think. Well, when you say the word nullify, I'm not sure exactly the structure that takes, because I haven't read the bill. I mean, I understand, and you can certainly give it to me. You can email it to me if you wish, bobbyharrell.com.
Sure.
But I'm happy to look at it and consider that. But as far as my position on whether or not the federal government ought to be able to be mandating things down to us like they do, I don't know if you remember, but just last legislative session, I was the lead sponsor on a bill that allowed states to called for a constitutional amendment at the federal level to allow states to repeal legislation by states getting together and saying, we as a number of states don't agree with this particular law, we think this law ought to be repealed. I introduced that 2 years ago. We took it up. I don't recall how far it went, to be quite honest with you. But Greg, do you remember how far that bill went?
It passed the House.
Okay, the bill, we got it passed in the House in the last legislative session. So I don't think we ought to be taking what the federal government tries to dish out to us at all. I think we absolutely ought to be standing up where we disagree with things that have occurred. And I introduced a constitutional amendment last legislative session in an attempt to do that. And I don't expect Republicans in the House to support opting in to those Obamacare provisions, as I talked about a couple of minutes ago.
Thank you.
Certainly.